So this is the new assembly application that Anthony Herb built from Business Solutions in the Cloud, and it really primarily replaces Boxora. There's a few reasons why we need a replacement for Boxora, which we'll go over at the very end. First, I just want to show you the application. Really light agenda. This shouldn't take us long at all. So the first I'm going to go over just when to use or recommend the application. And then we'll go over a quick demonstration just to show you how it works. Really straightforward. And then last, we can go over why Boxora need to be replaced, and then the extra features that the Assembly web application has. Assembly web app, that's what Anthony Herb calls it. I don't know if we want to stick with that name, but all right, there's really two primary reasons why you would recommend the Assembly web app. The first of which is pretty straightforward, light assembly, right? So if a customer comes to you, we'll just use a water bottle example because that's what we're using today. It says, I go ahead and I do some light manufacturing around water bottles. And you ask a little bit more and they say, well, yep, I just purchased the caps, I purchased the bottles themselves, and then I purchased the labels, and then in-house I put all three together. Well, they're gonna need an application that can identify, okay, these are actually raw materials, and then when they come together, that's now a finished good that's available for sale. So that's the first instance, pretty straightforward, that you'd want to use the Assembly web app. The second of which is the bundle and kitting. So we can do bundle and kitting straight from Brightpearl in one scenario. So the scenario that works really well out of Brightpearl is when you bundle or kit to order. So what that means is, let's just say that you're selling a cellophane in a case, right? So when the order comes down for the bundle, you go over to the cellophane section, grab a cellophane, then you go to the case section, grab the case, put them together, off it goes in the box, right? So it's bundling or kitting to order. Now, if you do it prior to order, that's where Brightpearl out of the box breaks down a little bit, or it has a few issues. That's where you'd want to use the Assembly web app. So in other words, if they're going to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to put the cell phones in the cases together prior to any orders coming down, and then put that in its own section of the warehouse, that's when you want to go ahead and use the Assembly web app. So it gives them the opportunity to say, okay, I'm deducting a case, I'm deducting a cell phone, and now I'm creating a cell phone case bundle. So those are really the primary two scenarios. There's some fringe cases out there that you might want to use this. Joe and I ran across one today around, doing some printing on a t-shirt. So buying blank t-shirts and doing the printing. I could see that kind of working here if you got creative. But these are the two primary reasons. Light assembly, taking components, putting them together into a finished good, and then doing bundles before the order comes down. It's a full solution. So it's an application that sits on top of Brightpearl. So just from a demo flow standpoint, so you're still going to manage all your products and create your products in Brightpearl, okay? When the product is a finished good, all you're going to want to do within a custom field in the product record is identify it as a bill of material. So you're just saying that it takes a bill of materials or raw materials in order to make this finished good. And then it's going to be available to be created in Anthony's solution called the Assembly web app. Once you do that, as I mentioned, it'll be available to be assembled. Then you can create the disassemble or assembly. Primarily assemble, right? That's usually what the customers are looking for. Sometimes they want disassemble as well, where they can break down some finished goods back into raw materials. So you definitely need it both ways, which this application does give you the ability to do. And then lastly is going to be the accounting and reporting. So when I go ahead and execute an assembly, so take a bunch of raw materials, create a finished good, all the accounting in the background will be taken care of for me. So we'll go through this whole process. So again, within Brightpearl back office, the only thing that you're going to need to do to recognize a finished good is to go into the item record. So we're going to use a Brightpearl water bottle for our example today. And within the custom fields, there's going to be under the extra info tab. Now this could be completely different per account, but they're going to need to have a bill of materials. Yes, no, not set. So you'd want to set that to yes. Once that's set to yes, it's going to be available to be established as a bill of material within the system here.
So that field is linked to the app that we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so if you look at that Brightpearl water bottle, we dive into this quickly. Here's where you have the ability to put all the component pieces that make up that Brightpearl water bottle, right? So we actually have the bottle itself, the label, and the cap. Now you could add more, and you could have different recipes or different bill of materials per finished good. So what that might look like is maybe you have 3 different types of bottles that you can still produce the same finished good with. Well, you can have different bill of materials. I only have one for this given, but again, here's our finished good up top. Here are the individual components that make up the given raw material. Now, when it comes time to actually assemble an item, you just go to the Assemblies tab here. You have a nice list of all your past assemblies. And just to back up real quick, one of the differentiators between Boxora in this new application is you're now going to have the ability to import your bill of materials and export. That's really going to help PS out. So Boxora was very limited in a number of ways, but one of which was having the ability to do a bill of material or an assembly piece in bulk. So import or export that information out, which is really hard on PS. So now this makes their life a lot easier. But back to the assembly. Here's, we're going to have a nice timeline of all your assemblies in the past. We're going to have a reference, date created, so on and so forth. But when it comes time to make a new assembly, all you do is just click the button here, create new assembly, type in either the SKU or some portion of the product's name. So we'll do the Bright Pearl water bottle. See, it pops up here. Now we're going to get a lot of information. So we're going to be able to see, okay, what's this given product? Where does it sit across our warehouses? So this application is multi-warehouse. Boxora was not. It can only link to one warehouse. So we can see for this given product, we have a main warehouse with 25 already established in there. In the East Coast warehouse, we have 5. And then in our Seattle fulfillment center, 0. So now it becomes time to actually produce an assembly. So what this would look like in the real world is you make a call to whoever is responsible for assembling these water bottles, and you say, hey, listen, we're low in our main warehouse. We want you to go ahead and assemble 10 and then send them over. They would jump into this application, type in Bright Pearl water bottle, be able to identify exactly what's on hand across the different physical inventory locations. Then they go ahead and say, okay, what recipe or bill of materials do I want to use? Here you'll see the one we established. Now you can see the individual component, what's on hand across all the individual warehouses. Because we only have, this is a 1-for-1 ratio, so we're saying that we need 1 bottle, 1 label, and 1 cap to make 1 Bright Pearl water bottle. As you can see, if we're going to go ahead and target the main warehouse here, we only have 80 available for the cap. That's why it's saying that max we can make is 80, right? So based on the component pieces, based on the individual components that make up the raw material, it's going to tell you how many you can make. So we want to send 10 over. So we go ahead and select a warehouse here. Now the target warehouse, that's where we're going to go ahead and put them. So let's say we're going to put them in the main warehouse, and then we could pull these from the Seattle fulfillment center. Right, so we're saying we're going to pull these individual components from the Seattle fulfillment center. We're going to make this Bright Pearl water bottle, so the actual finished good. We're going to make 10 of them, and then that finished good's heading to our main warehouse. Once we submit this information down, we should get a verification saying that it was correct. I didn't select a cost price. So once we submit this information, you can see that it was successful. So now if we jump into our general ledger and just refresh here, we're going to be able to see that all the accounting was taken care of for us. So in other words, in the background, we're acknowledging, okay, we removed those component pieces. We now have 10 less each of those individual component pieces, and then we move that into 10 of the actual finished good, which is now heading to that main warehouse. So if we go to the inventory detail and refresh here, we'll also see that represented as well. So now we can see that the last one we did here, we moved 5 in stock into the main warehouse. So lastly, I promised we'd go over just quickly what the differences between Boxora and the Assembly web app is. So again, it's not technically a Bright Pearl application. It was built by Anthony Herb specifically for Bright Pearl. I think you might be able to link it up directly to the like Shopify or Magento as well. I think he told me. It's now supported, so Boxora actually wasn't supported. It was built by Chris Tanner, and I think he stopped supporting it. So if there was any issues, which there very rarely was, but if there was an issue, there was really no one to contact. Really important here for PS, import, export, bill of materials. So now they can go ahead and establish that in a CSV or an Excel file, upload all that information at once. No longer do they have to do it one by one. That was a really big headache on PS to the point where, they kind of encouraged us not to sell. For multiple reasons, not to sell Boxora, but that was definitely one of them, just because that was so time consuming. And then multi-warehouse capabilities, really important. Boxora didn't have the ability to only link up to one warehouse. But the reality is you really would have probably 2 warehouses, one having the raw materials or the individual components that make up a finished good, and then a finished good warehouse. Now you might not actually have 2 physical locations, but at least you're going to segment your warehouse in that way. So it's really important that we have multi-warehouse capabilities, which we do have. Can link to multiple Bright Pearl instances. This isn't a huge deal, but definitely worth pointing out. So let's say a company did have 2 Bright Pearl accounts, you could just have one of these applications that sits on top of both of those accounts. Scalability, definitely important here. That was a huge limitation of Boxora. Joe, how many SKUs could it take? 250 SKUs, and then it would basically stop performing.
Boxora does not work.
It's not that. Yeah. So now we can actually go, so rather than, Boxora was only something that we'd recommend if the customer had like 1 or 2 scenarios where they were taking components or developing a bundle beforehand, right? 1 or 2 instances, that's the only time we could really offer it up. Well, now if they said that, the majority of my product catalog has an assembly piece, or I am doing some pre-assembled bundles or kitting beforehand, now we can go ahead and offer them a real solution that is Assembly Web App here. And then allows users to define costing of an assembly. So as you saw before, I used the cost price there, but you can have all different types of cost prices associated with the component items that make up that raw material. So a lot more flexibility, a lot more scalability, the multiple warehouses, that's certainly important. And that's just important to know that it is fully supported now.
But how do you do purchasing? It's going to be at the componentry level?
Yeah, so you purchase at the component level. And then once those components come in, you're going to acknowledge, okay, based on the amount of components I now have, I can make so many raw materials. And then you come into here and actually execute the assembly. So again, you probably, in a normal organization that we would deal with, they would have one individual or a couple individuals that are responsible for the assembly, right? Or maybe the guy probably has multiple responsibilities, but one of his responsibilities would be the assembly. So they say, hey, listen, we just got a bunch of different component parts in. Why don't you make 10 additional finished goods and send them over to the main warehouse? He just pops into here. He says, I'm going to create a new assembly. He says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple more water bottles. Now he goes off on the side, actually puts the water bottles together, and then he comes back into here and says, okay, I created 10.
Does it say and the inventory levels for the components?
It does, yep, right here,
In Bright Pearl?
across all your different warehouses.
Okay.
So
Here's
here's,
what would happen if you tried to make too many?
it would just get an error.
Okay.
That's why it actually has the max for you.
Those software folks for the components in this web app or in Bright Pearl?
You could set it both, but it's not within the web app. The only thing the web app is going to be used for is establishing your bill of materials for a finished good and then actually executing the assembly piece or disassembly. Disassembly is going to work in the same exact manner, just a breakdown. It's going to say that I have this many raw materials, I can make this, I can pull that raw material, or I'm sorry, I have this many finished goods. Based on how many finished goods I have, this is how many raw materials I can now disassemble this finished good into this many raw materials. Yeah, that's where you're mostly going to use the disassembly, where you're saying, okay, now I have an inventory arrive in a pallet. It's considered one pallet. That pallet might have 20 cases on it. Within those 20 cases, there might be 400 individual components. Well, you need a system that can break that down, right? So now you're saying that I have 0 pallets, 20 cases. Maybe you break down a few cases. Now I have 18 cases, 200 individual units, right? So that's what you use.
The pre-built bundles and the assembly, the majority of people's orders can be done that way.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to go, it's only 5% will recommend this. If they do a lot of assembly, you can handle a lot of.
Yeah. It's not like, by no means do we want to go ahead and market it as a full-blown manufacturing module, right?
But if somebody sells water bottles and apparel branded as a water
But yeah, if it's like I'm buying 3 or 4 goods and I easily assemble those into a finished good, this is going to work completely fine. Where it's not going to work is if I'm buying sheets of metal and cutting them into all different types of shape and I have a ton of direct labor and indirect labor associated with a given finished good, that's true assembly, right? It's still not going to work. So by no means, if you get a manufacturer on the phone, don't tell them we have a solution for that. You get someone on the phone, they say that, yes, I do light assembly, and then they say, yeah, I'm taking, it doesn't even really matter the amount of components. It could be 30 or 50. And I ask an individual that puts those together in order to create a finished good, then the answer is now yes. We don't have to worry about that anymore.
So does Bright Pearl keep track of all the components? So like whenever a shipment comes in, that's just one water bottle cap, that's locked in Bright Pearl and was just recorded.
Yep, so you still do your purchasing and receiving of shipments within Bright Pearl, and then it automatically speaks to this application in real time.
What's the sales cycle? Because like if somebody, I would present this to somebody, will we write this to you or should I have to write this to you?
No, so Anthony only wants to be contacted when the sale is actually going to be executed. So he won't be doing any demonstrations. He won't be explaining the application. The only time he's going to want to be contacted is when we, got full commitment from a customer, and now it's time for him to send over the contract. Because again, he's gonna take payment, and he's also going to do the maintenance around it. Now, you can bake that into a Bright Pro contract, of course, with press's approval or the proper approval. But majority of the time, you're just going to say, okay, you're going to get a bill from Business Solutions in the cloud.
Is there any documentation or something like this I can send to the customer?
No, there's not. We can put some together.
So basically, all we need to do is just
Let's
schedule
do a
time.
community post.
I can schedule some time with you guys and do that when we find a customer.
Yeah,
Is
that,
that how it goes?
we can certainly do that for you. Should be a quick demonstration. So it's just asking your customers, hey, listen, if you're doing light assembly, how are you doing it? If I say I'm doing it I'm doing inventory adjustments in a spreadsheet today within Bright Pro, it's a huge pain in the ass. Those are the type of customers you want to target. Or customers in the wholesale division that are receiving pallets and then breaking those pallets down. So in other words, I receive a pallet, that's one pallet. That pallet might have 20 cases on it. Those 20 cases might be 400 individual units. Eventually, they're going to have to break that down. This application will work really well for that. And then we have other customers that say, I don't put my kits and bundles together at the time of order. I put them together prior, store them on a shelf, and then as those orders come in, the kits and bundles are ready to go. This application is going to work very well for that as well. Those are the three primary scenarios that you want to look for.
Is there any type of like goods out or goods in notes between transferring between warehouses?
Actually, we need to look into that. I don't believe so.
Because I'm just trying to think of like the actual workflow of someone saying, all right, like, can't I print anything out to say, hey, go.
It doesn't create an inventory transfer for you. All it's saying is that they're already there, right? So that's got to be done behind the scenes. So again, let's say like, it's an Austin company in their raw material warehouses on the west side and their finished good warehouses on the east side. When they go ahead and say, okay, now I've created 10 finished goods from these raw materials, it's automatically just going to assume it's over. It's over in the raw. So they just need to make sure that they're aware of that.
So in Atlanta Cigars use case, how does this know their business operation?
So Atlantic Cigar would receive boxes of cigars, and then they would sell in units of 5 and then singles, right? And they need to build and break those all the time. So they have on their website, hey, I sell a box for price X. I sell a case of 20 for price B. Sell a case of 5 for price C. So they're just constantly figuring out, okay, where do I need demand? And they're taking single cigars and building and breaking those kind of units of measure, if you will. So that's where this application would really fit in. And this was specifically built for them, but it was built with a lot more scenarios in mind.
Yeah.
It's 850 British pounds plus tax, whatever that comes out to. And then there's a monthly hosting, monitoring, support fee. So if anything goes wrong, they just call Anthony's team up. He takes care of it. If anything, he's got to host it, obviously. He's got to host the application. And then he's got to monitor it on his own time as well to make sure that it's fully up to speed and up to customer standards. And that costs about 160 British pounds per month.
We expect it's like $2,700 per year to host it, $2,700, and it's like $1,300 to build. So for year one, $4,000.
Yeah. Any additional questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey,